Is it remotely possible that a supplier, and when I talk about a supplier of product, I'm talking about an organisation whose core competencies are the design, fabrication and supply of products, is it possible a supplier can work collaboratively with a client? And when I talk about a client, I talk about management, operations, logistics, safety and environmental team. Is it possible they can all work together in a collaborative environment to drive innovation in the logistics industry? Is it possible that a supplier and a client can share risk in an R&D project? Well, we believe it can, and this is our story. Our agenda for our presentation today is firstly to reiterate the incumbent methodology in R&D projects, but most importantly I'd like to be clear that we're not here to deride the people that do follow traditional procurement methods. We here simply suggest that there are some other opportunities to do it smarter. We'll do that using the case study for the project that we did together called the Container Rollout Warehousing System. Then we'll talk about the benefits from a supplier point of view and a customer point of view. And then we'll just highlight how we feel there is another model for a collaborative approach to solving problems.
I guess if we start off the incumbent procurement methodology, I think it's a model we're all familiar with. All of our organisations use something like this. First of all, we identify the need, we develop the business case, we look at specifications, you develop and execute that tender plan, you then hopefully get into contract, and that's where the real risk starts all around for both supplier and for the client. You'll go through a design test evaluation process, and then you'll go into that project management, fabrication and delivery phase. And that's incredibly, that's the complex phase. That's where you've got to put all your resources in there, and you've got to have that team. The previous presentation really demonstrated how you need to have that project team in there from the very start, working through right to the very end, and they're the key role that they actually play. What we found, and Kentz as a company, we're very focused on being agile, on being able to react, and also to actually meet our customers' needs. What we found on this project was, or in project work, we didn't have the time to go through that full process to get this whole system out, rolled out. We had to come up with an abridged version that allowed us to actually achieve the change during the life of the project. In the end, what does that model get you? What does the current model get you? Well, the one thing it does get you is comprehensive outcomes. It actually gives you the solution that you're after. More often than not, if you follow that process that we looked at before, you'll get exactly what you're after. It just takes time. Now, the other thing it does, it is expensive, it's time consuming. And in the project world where you don't have a lot of time to dedicate to this, you really want to get to the crux of the problem and sort it out as soon as you possibly can. It gives you strict contracts and process conditions. It can restrict innovation, it can restrict agility. If you're trying to do it and roll it out in the life of a project, if you're going down one path, you find that's blocked, you'll find it's very hard to turn around again, because you may well be in a very strong contract environment. If the contract isn't right, it's a high commercial risk, both for the client but also for the supplier. And in the end, and I think we've all been there, the project delivery, it really is that emotional roller coaster. It can get adversarial, and if it does, there's just no winners out of it. So really what we looked for was how to do it a bit differently.
So let me be really honest and give you the perspective of the supplier when we have those initial inquiries and we go through a tender process. Well, to be very honest, when the first phone calls come in, I very rarely put all my cards on the table, and in particular commercial information, pricing. So you need to keep information pretty close at this point. Is that really helping the potential customer write their business case? No, but you have to look after your own interests first. And then comes the tender. And in many cases, it's just an ocean of documents, legislation and specification and procedures, particularly from big organisations, that it just takes an enormous amount of time for you to cover off on your risk and understand, where are frankly the banana skins. And I think to be very specific, the area where we struggle the most is when we look at the tenders or the functional design briefs to try and articulate what the customer's looking for. And to be candid, we find that they're either over the top and a cut and paste of a new mooncraft going to Jupiter, or it's very vague and very ambiguous. And frankly, that means that the project starts off on pretty loose foundations. Really, the key decision for us is a bid, no bid. We look to see if in that specification that there are very clear dynamics where the supplier's already picked a customer. So the traditional model, we start off very cautious. What are the outcomes? What's the end state of the traditional model? Well, for us to put a professional and comprehensive solution forward, we need to expend significant resources. Generally speaking, in our world, that means you need to produce a concept design. And a professional tender, a big professional tender, is a lot of work. The outcome of that could very well be nil return on investment. And again, to be candid and frank, there's uncertainty about putting your good ideas on the table. There is a potential that they've already selected a supplier, but you've got a few ideas within your concept that they can take and put into the end solution. So there's a risk there of relationship damage.
So let's have a look at, I guess, the case study. Some of you may have already been out on the floor and seen the CROWS in action. For us, and we're going back now to the middle of 2013, I joined the project that I was on, a massive project. And we really saw that the challenges were on us and the materials team not to be the ones who slowed down the construction phase. We had a number of limitations, a number of challenges that we really had to get through. The first of all, of those is safety. Safety is paramount to us. Everything we do that's the first thing we assess against it. From an environmental perspective, we needed to make our supply chain environmentally viable and sustainable for the environment that we were working in. Budget was always important. If we could do it cheaper, that was great. But what we were actually willing to do in the project sense was to spend money up front to actually give us the benefit down the track. For us, and this was the key to us, the maintenance of the schedule. The materials and logistics teams couldn't be the ones that were holding up the project. And yet at that stage of the project, it looked like we were going to be the team that was going to be the weak link. So what we did was we had to look at options to get more tonnes per 20-foot equivalent unit than what we currently were. We just were not getting the right tonnage to achieve the schedule and the timeframes that we were looking for. So what we did at that point was we actually looked at other systems around we did an environmental scan. We looked around the world, how were other organisations doing that? And one of the key elements we looked at was how was the military doing it? The military, they are responsive, they look for rapid outcomes. So using past experience and also that environmental scan, we looked at options.
So as Andrew said, the first phone call was questions about our military platforms. And fortunately we had one in country, so we shipped one across to him and said, here you go, have a play with that. We then had our team go across and talk to them about, was it a fit? And whilst it was close, there were clearly specific requirements of the project in terms of environment and safety that it wasn't a fit. And so what we did was we offered to them to join with us, or us to join with them in a collaborative design project. And what that meant was, in the first instance, that I would send our team of engineers to their supply base and facilitate writing a functional design brief. That specification, which we spoke about earlier, that is often problematic. But our request was that the key environmental, safety, logistics and operations people who were working on the project, the guys with the grease on their hands, would be around the table and would give us their functional inputs. What was it that they needed to solve their problems? And importantly, it was our team who were specialists in designing these platforms were the ones that were extracting the questions. These are the questions that we need in order to get to this end state. Our proposition was that once we had agreed on this was a baseline functional design brief, that we would produce a concept design. And again, we would do a design review with those people in the room. And then progress to a detailed design. And once we got to a point where we were happy as a team that design would solve that problem, and also, let me add that, importantly, we collaboratively developed a plan to validate the performance of this platform. how is it we prove the system works? Let's come up with a system and a schedule of testing it, both in the factory and a field trial at their facility. Once we'd agreed on that, the baseline was set. And so we built a prototype, we conducted the field trial.
Yeah, and it's probably worth noting here that in that process, whilst we were working with CBOX, all the risk was with them. They were basically coming to us, providing us with the support. So at that point, we then had to agree to, right at that stage, commit early that we would engage at the appropriate level, give them access to the right people and the right areas. But also, we had a discussion about the IP, the intellectual property. And in the end, we felt at that stage, given that all the work was coming from CBOX, all the funding was coming from CBOX, that IP would actually remain with the supplier.
So what are my risks? Well, of course, there's a risk that it was a complete waste of our resources facilitating this design and building prototypes. There was a risk there would be no procurement. We wouldn't sell a single one of them and would have this platform collecting dust. And also there was a risk that we weren't going to get agreement from all of the stakeholders that this would be fit for purpose. But I did an assessment, a financial assessment on what we thought it would cost to go through this process, and I can promise you that that cost was significantly less than major tender processes that we have gone through in the last 3 years. But most importantly, our assessment was that this was just the most unbelievable opportunity to get in and understand our customers' operations. You can attend as many conferences and read as many articles as you want, but to have the opportunity to get into their supply base and see their operations and understand the challenges that they face, it was a no-brainer.
Yeah, and again, we went through our risks and assessed what we had to gain and what we had to lose. The potential to waste resources. In the end, it was really a decision based on necessity. I had to give up myself, my own time, and 3 people part-time during the project. We still had our day jobs, but effectively 3 or 4 people. I had to make sure we got agreement from all our stakeholders. Being a project already in train, we had to bring a lot of people on board to get them to get their sign-off, and also if we didn't fail to achieve those outcomes. Well, in the assessment for us, we were still early in a project. There was still a question as to whether we'd be the ones who held up the project, or we'd be the ones who actually facilitated it. So for us, a win early in the project would really pay dividends. So for minimal financial outlay, for potentially a massive benefit. And all we had to do was get collaboration from those key stakeholders. So from the very start, we brought those stakeholders into the tent. We started working with them as we worked with CBOX. And as I said, making that solution possible during the life cycle of the project actually meant we could see the benefit.
So we engaged in the project, and as we requested, I was amazed that we did get access to that range of stakeholders that we discussed. But not surprisingly, the fact that those people were empowered to be a part of the project, they were motivated and very professional. And throughout the design journey, we had these sounding boards that we had access to. Whenever there was an issue or a challenge, the requirement to validate a design change, on hand were the people who were affected. And we got that information very quickly, and the design process progressed very quickly.
Yeah, as I said before, the stakeholders were actually, we didn't form a separate project team and break them away. They came from my team and what they were doing the job daily. So for us, it was all about making it easy for them, but getting the right level of information out so CBOX could do their job. CBOX came to us, they facilitated everything. They came to our location, they came into our world, they learned our business, they learned our problems, and they listened to us. They produced the prototypes. They actually got us over into the factory to look at the prototypes being developed, and in the space of effectively 12 months, if you apologise, but I'll just read a few of these out. Our safety performance and practices have improved. We no longer have people go inside of a container. All of our loading and unloading work for material is done outside of a sea container. It's done on the CROWS. So again, we're just reducing that hazard of people going inside of that confined space. We've had a 60% reduction in our crane lifts. Again, we're now using forks. So forks, far more efficient, far cheaper, and far safer than using cranes. We've increased by up to 50% the density that we're putting into a TU. So we've doubled the amount that we're sending. For our project especially, we've eliminated the wrapping. So if we put material on a flat rack, our requirement was to plastic wrap it. A massive expense, thousands of dollars per flat rack. We've removed that. We've optimised our laydown space. If you look at the CROW, you'll see that it's stackable up to 4 high. So on a construction site, materials normally laid out in the ground. We've now got a field storage system that goes vertical. So we've reduced by half, up to at times a factor of 3, the amount of laydown that we're actually operating on our construction zone. We're now packing by work pack. So we pack that work pack in my location, we put it on a barge, we send it to the construction site. It's then delivered to the construction site by work pack, reducing the amount of people who need to be in that intermediate phase on our construction site, delivering the material. And in 7 months of full operation of the CROWS, we've reduced by 20% the amount of TUs we're putting into our supply chain. So we've reduced 1 in 5 in the amount of containers that we are putting into the supply chain. So those numbers, in our mind, in the 12 months, from the time we started this, the concern was we were going to be the problem. I can tell you right now, we are not the problem.
So what were the benefits for CBOX? Well, we walked away with this project with what I believe is a world-class innovation. It is a product that we can now say is in service. It's a product that we can now say there is data to support its benefits, not a concept that sits on a file system, which was what we did in that tender we spoke about 20 minutes ago. As importantly for us as a small Australian engineering capability, we were given a magnificent insight into our customers' requirements. We now understand how to drive further innovation because we've had that insight. We've established long-term relationships. When people from Kentz pick up the phone and ask us questions, we give them the answers. And you know, our vision is that we have now proven our capability to go through in a trusted long-term relationship to deliver projects. And I think also importantly for us is that we validated our own internal process in terms of research and development and validation and verification of projects. So what does this new model really look like? Well, at the end of the day, the customer's still going to find an opportunity or a need, and they're still going to go out looking for to understand what industry can do. But our proposition is, instead of releasing tenders, that there's an opportunity to shortlist companies who have a like product to go out and request companies who are interested in joining an R&D project. Of course, there needs to be KPIs to drive this expedited procurement process. And I'd suggest they would be centred around, you know, the compatibility with the product that they have compared to your need, what experience they have in delivering R&D projects, their engineering and design capability, and also you need to have some commercial awareness and understand what the rough order of magnitude costs for their products are, and validate that against industry benchmarks.
Yes, so the client, what do we get out of this? I guess we're the sounding board along the journey. These guys come along, but the danger is they don't understand our business. So we get them involved and we actually talk to them and we let them know what our requirements are clearly, and they become embedded in our organisation. We provide the operations knowledge. So they understand how we do our business, what the unique part of our business is. For our industry, the health, safety, environment knowledge, you know, it is at a higher level. We did need to bring these guys along on that, and they jumped on board, no problem at all. The other piece also is we had to accept when the challenges came that we weren't there to knock down the solutions. We were actually there to support them. We were there to actually get an outcome. And not prove that we were right, but actually get an outcome that worked for all of us.
From a supplier point of view in this relationship, what would I suggest is your role? Well, first and foremost, you need to be driving the development of that functional design brief, that specification. You're the people that should be setting that solid platform for the design project to proceed with. Again, you're the people that should be managing the design. You need to put skin in the game. You need to go, you build the prototype, you've got skin in the game. It's not all the customer's risk. And you need to be actively engaged in the field trials and the factory testing to make sure that the product is 100%.
Yeah, so to finish up, we went from first phone call in September 2013 to, we went through the needs requirement, the design, the prototyping, the procurement. We had 4,000 of these items delivered to us in September 2014. So in 12 months, we effectively developed a new product and put it into service and had it operate on our project. So that to me is a massive challenge and a massive time frame. But the success couldn't have been achieved unless we had that relationship. We took the approach we did with CBOX. Today wasn't saying that you've got to do business this way. It won't suit every business. In fact, it will suit probably very few. But the fact remains that there is another way of doing business. Okay, you can share the problem solving, the risk management, the mutual trust, the respect for each other, and the experience and knowledge will produce, in our case at least, far better outcomes.
Now I'm going to embarrass this bloke here and also his boss sitting over here. I spoke heavily about how important it is to have the guys in the yellow shirts with grease on their hands involved in the process, but there's also my view that you need to have executive level leadership and courage to go down this expedited R&D project. And I think massive credit needs to go to Kentz as an organisation for partnering with us to produce what we think is just a fantastic product.